Hello, my name is Kerryoth, and today we are going to do a little roundup of the various things what I have heard, read, and people are talking about for the Vigilus Weekender, i.e. the stuff that we might see, the stuff that Games Workshop is possibly going to announce, the various theories and ideas that are floating around, because there are a lot of them. There's a lot, and some of it is plausible, some of it is not quite as plausible, but would be awesome, and some of it, I don't know, some of it seems like it could be a thing, but also like it really couldn't be a thing. So let's talk about a couple of the biggest ones. So I think let's start with the Primarch question, because it's always about Primarchs. Whenever Games Workshop says something big is coming, then there's usually I'm just talking about Valrak. There's always someone who's like Primarchs, and this is no different. The thing is that in this case, it's been suggested, or it has been leaked, or someone has told Valrak that Angron is going to be what's revealed to be on Vigilus. He, like Demon Primarch Angron, he's coming back in a big way, and Vigilus is where he's chosen to make his entrance. I don't think it's that unlikely, to be perfectly honest. Vigilus is clearly gearing up to be something big. It already is something big. It's turned into like the battleground for every single race in the 40k universe at this point. That's an exaggeration. Tau aren't there, and as far as I know, no, Tau aren't there. Who else isn't there? I think that's it. Everyone's there, loving it, absolutely loving the giant wasteland blood bowl arena that is Vigilus. It's all about massive killing, and so Angron would make sense to show up there. The only thing that I am not 100% convinced by in terms of Angron showing up at Vigilus is that would be, for a start, that would be the third Chaos Primarch to return to a grand total of one Loyalist, which, to be honest, I can see Games Workshop doing, but there is a lot of personal bias in that I would prefer that they didn't, because there's only so many times Guilliman can fight his demonically empowered brothers and survive before I start to get a little bit annoyed at the sheer amount of plot armor surrounding him. It just doesn't feel like it would be that good a story, to be honest, to just put it completely bluntly. On the other hand, we have now two of the four kind of distinct god-aligned Primarchs out, and it would be daft to assume or suggest that we won't see the other two. So Angron is, I mean, he's on the cards at some point, regardless of what happens. When it comes to the Demon Primarchs, the ones that I would suggest are absolutely 100% guaranteed to come back are Angron and Fulgrim at this point, because as it stands, we have a Thousand Suns Codex with Magnus. We have a Death Guard Codex with Mortarion. You are not telling me that they are only going to do two of the four God-aligned Codexes, and that we are only going to see two of the four God-aligned Primarchs come back. That's not going to happen. At some point, whether it's like tomorrow or in a year's time, we will obviously see the other two before we see any of the others. I would put my money on. I mean, I go that far easily. It's just whether or not Angron would show up on Vigilus itself. To be honest, I'm more leaning towards the other load of chatter that I keep seeing, which is that it will be a case of Abaddon and the Black Legion showing up at Vigilus. And my main thinking behind that is that, kind of in the grand scheme of the Chaos stuff, Khorne Demonkin, thank you, everyone who reminded me what that was. I could not for the life remember the name of that codex. We've had, the Khorne Demonkin codex, we then had the Thousand Suns, we had the Death Guard, then most likely I would suggest we will see Emperor's Children next, and then Khorne. Angron being just randomly showing up in between that doesn't seem all that likely, and I've not heard anything. I've heard plenty of stuff about a Emperor's Children codex and Emperor's Children models. I've heard very little about anything Khorne related outside of the Wrath and Rapture box, which is Age of Sigmar. I mean, there could be a tie-in there, but also arguably Emperor's Children tie-in as well, since it's Slaanesh and Khorne. The one that I'm more leaning towards, which again could be completely just not true anyway, is Black Legion. There being distinct Black Legion characters or units showing up at Vigilus. I would be more inclined to think that it would be a new Abaddon model and some of the, the new Chaos stuff that we've seen from Blackstone Fortress, that, in maybe like a month or 2 months we start to see those boxes come out as part of a larger Vigilus storyline where we actually have, maybe some Black Legion specific stuff. Not a full codex, I wouldn't have thought, but things like the Traitor Garden stuff, I have trouble believing that Games Workshop is going to stick that out for Black Fortress and then we never see it coming as like a separate box. I'm pretty sure they've confirmed anyway that the Chaos Space Marines at least are going to be a separate release in the new year at some point. I'm more heavily leaning towards Black Legion showing up at Vigilus than I am for Angron showing up at Vigilus, just because there's been more to indicate that that would be the case. Now, I'm not saying that is guaranteed, because obviously it's not. That's just another theory in the grand like mess of theories surrounding this thing, but that's kind of where I'm leaning at the moment. There's also the little teaser that Games Workshop put out yesterday, like the little video thing, which I noticed was a CG thing, which is kind of makes me wonder whether it might be some sort of game, like actual video game, but then again, it may well not be. There's so much you can read into for that. It's delightfully vague. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, it could be literally anything. To me, it most likely signifies the reinforcements that have been talked about for Vigilus, whereby we might see new versions of the Redemptor Dreadnought, or a new type of Dreadnought entirely. I would assume probably a different loadout for the Redemptor, but being hyped up a little bit more than maybe it should, which there's a little bit of a history with Games Workshop for doing that. But that, to me, that indicates probably just something along those lines. I have seen some really awesome, incredibly unlikely, but really awesome ideas where it's like, could be Lost in the Damned. That could be cool. That would be awesome. That would be awesome. I don't think it is that, but it would be awesome. Who was it on Twitter? I saw an amazing thread where people were talking about Iron Hands had been specifically mentioned, and what if it was Ghost Iron Hands from Istvan being led by Ghost Ferris Manus as a new Lost. That would be incredibly silly. I'd love it. I'm there for that. I'm there for it. I absolutely want to see that. Chances of it actually happening, I think, fairly slim. Let's be honest. I did have my own kind of mini mixed theory from that, which is something that I would hope would never happen, but it did make me sort of chuckle to myself, given how much Games Workshop like Ultramarines. What if it is a bit of Ghost Marine action, but now it's been retconned that they're actually dead Ultramarines who are returning to serve Gilliman. Can you imagine the riots? Can you imagine the backlash if that actually happened? Obviously, that's not what it is. That's never going to be what it is. But that would be kind of funny, in a meltdown sort of way, admittedly. But yeah, that's obviously not what it is. The chances of it being some form of Dreadnought, whether it's like a named character Dreadnought, or whether it's a new loadout for Dreadnoughts, are high. There's like distinct reference to Tyrannid stuff as well for the banner, which that could be read into as well. It could be pointing out an imminent drop of Genestealer Codex and some sort of narrative thing to go along with it, of the Ultramarines obviously fighting Genestealers, or it could be that Tyrannids are arriving at Vigilus and the Ultramarines have shown up with their reinforcements of a new type of Dreadnought and maybe a new type of Repulsor to fight them off. There's all sorts of things that could be read into that, but I think there are safe bets with that one, and I'm kind of leaning more towards just some sort of new variety of big stompy robot, basically. I think I'd be surprised if it was anything like massively outlandish. To be honest, something that would be kind of cool is if we got like an actual more, even though I'm not too fussed, even though I'm not collecting them actively, actually having the Primaris range extended a little bit, so there's some real close combat options, and maybe, I don't know, a Gravis Captain that you can buy outside of the Dark Imperium box. That'd be nice. Something like that, again, completely plausible, completely possible. It's only a short teaser. There's not a lot in it, and you can read a lot into that kind of thing, let's be honest. But I think there are safe bets and there are non-safe bets. Just some different versions of a Dreadnought, I think, is a safe bet. Ferrus Manus leading an army of Ghost Iron Hands, not quite as safe a bet, but it would be kind of fun. There's so much. There's so many things, and Games Workshop is very good at being nice and vague. And with Vigilus itself, like especially with this Vigilus Weekender, they have been, I would say, uncharacteristically good at not having stuff leaked to high heaven. Quite often, again, something that is making me a little bit skeptical about the Angron thing, and admittedly about the Abaddon thing as well. Like I can't apply this criticism to one and not the other. We haven't had any sort of like leaked images of any kind. There's not really been anything that's shown up for that, and generally speaking, we tend to get at least a little bit here and there. We get something in advance, whether it's Games Workshop doing it themselves, whether it's them reacting to someone getting a cheeky picture with a camera from like 15 years ago. There quite often is something, and there isn't really anything for either, which, you know, I can't apply that to one and not the other. But given what we've seen from Blackstone Fortress and given what we've seen in terms of new sculpts, it really does make me feel like Black Legion are going to be the focus for Vigilus in terms of chaos, as opposed to like World Eaters or Angron or Khorne in general. In terms of things like the reinforcements, we know that there's like some sort of thing showing up, whether it's Ultramarines leading that, or whether there is like an Ultramarines named Dreadnought that is coming out, but also we might see something from the Iron Hands, since they've been specifically mentioned, bringing some sort of new Primaris tech along with them. That's entirely possible. There's like, I've seen people mention Iron Hands Tech Marines, since, you know, well, they're Iron Hands. If any Primaris guys were going to start doing the old Tech Marine route, you'd think the Iron Hands would be the first there. So there's, yeah, it's so far been kept pretty well under wraps, but there are a few theories that I think make more sense than others. Really, it's just going to be interesting to see what the reaction is to whatever it is, because Games Workshop have, you know, they've said something big is coming, and they're very good at saying something big is coming, but it's not always arguably as big as people think it's going to be. We as a community in general can sometimes be very bad at limiting our imaginations as to what is realistic for Games Workshop to do. So, yeah, I mean, we've only got to wait like, what, 18 hours or something at this point? Something like that, before we'll probably know what the deal is. To be honest, I hope it's something big and something impressive. It would be awesome if it was Angron. It would also be awesome if it was Fulgrim, which, again, I've seen a couple of things of people mentioning that. There's been, you know, stirrings up of kind of Emperor's Children rumours again, but there's not really been anything to indicate Emperor's Children just showing up at Vigilus so far. Whereas, as I say, I feel like Black Legion have got a little bit more in the way of plausibility for that. But yeah, those are the more interesting things what I've seen regarding the Vigilus Weekender and what we might or might not see. Which do you think is most likely? Do you think we are going to see Angron? Do you think we'll see Abaddon? Do you think we'll see Fulgrim? Do you think we'll see a headless ghost of Ferrus Manus leading a bunch of ghostly Iron Hands? Because that would be fucking hilarious. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and it won't be long before we find out. In the meantime, feel free to click video, Patreon, subscribe, all of that shit. Click it if you like, don't click it if you don't want to, and I will see you for the next one. Toodaloo.